The crystal palace of Giara stood tall beneath the twin suns. Its shining towers reached high into the green sky, glowing with light from thousands of energy stones. From the outside it looked perfect, a place of beauty, power, and peace. But inside the halls were filled with fear. Servants whispered in corners. Guards avoided one room at all costs, the royal nursery. From there every night came a sound that made even the bravest soldiers tremble. The cries of the young prince. His voice was not like any other child's. His screams made glass shake. Lights flicker and sometimes the walls cracked. His name was Prince Kale, son of Queen Giara, the most feared ruler of the galaxy. He was the future of the Giaran Empire. But the child was sick. Born with unstable energy inside his body, he cried in pain every few hours. No medicine or power could stop it. The queen had called the best healers from 100 worlds. She had paid more than anyone could imagine. Yet none could help her son, and none could stay alive long in her service. In just 2 months, 15 royal nannies had been fired, or vanished. Some left in tears. Others fainted and were carried away. One had even gone mad after a single night. Rumors spread that the palace was cursed, that the prince carried a shadow spirit. The queen grew colder with each failure. Her heart, once warm and strong, had turned to ice. Every time a nanny failed, she gave the same order. Remove them from my sight. The servants learned never to speak to her unless spoken to. The sound of her armor alone made them drop to their knees. And so the palace became quiet during the day. But at night the screams returned. Ethan Cole was the palace janitor. A human. A quiet man from Earth sent here as part of a work exchange program. Most aliens ignored him. To them, humans were weak, simple creatures, good for cleaning, nothing else. Ethan didn't mind. He needed this job. He was a single father, raising his 10-year-old daughter, Lily, after his wife had died on Earth. The palace gave him food, shelter, and safety. He worked the night shifts, cleaning the long silver halls when most of the royal staff slept. But every night when the prince began to cry, Ethan stopped and listened. It wasn't just noise, it was pain. Real deep pain. The sound broke something inside him. It reminded him of the nights his daughter had cried after her mother's death, and how helpless he had felt. One night, as he pushed his cleaning drone through the corridor near the nursery, the screams were louder than ever. 2 guards stood outside the golden door looking pale and scared. "The queen is coming," one whispered. "She'll burn the next nanny herself." Ethan frowned. He couldn't just walk away. The screams sounded wrong. They weren't just painful. They were desperate. He took a slow breath, stepped forward, and before the guards could stop him, he opened the nursery door. The air inside shimmered with blue fire. Furniture floated in the air and crashed into the walls. In the center of the room, a small alien child lay on the bed, glowing with energy. His skin was pale like crystal, and his eyes burned like suns. The prince screamed again, his tiny hands clawing at his chest. Ethan's body told him to run. But something in his heart said otherwise. He dropped his tools and rushed forward. "It's okay, kid," he said softly, his voice calm. "I've got you." He picked up the prince carefully. For a second, the energy around them sparked. A wave of blue light filled the room, and then silence. The boy stopped crying. The floating furniture dropped to the floor. The light dimmed. The guards burst into the room, weapons raised, but froze when they saw the impossible. The prince, asleep in the arms of a human janitor. Ethan looked at them, confused. He just needed someone to hold him, he said quietly. The guards exchanged terrified looks. One ran off to alert the queen, the other whispered, "You've just signed your death, human." Moments later, the golden doors slammed open. Queen Giara entered, her tall armored figure glowing with power. Her crown shimmered with dark fire. Everyone in the room dropped to their knees. Ethan didn't move, he just held the child close, her eyes locked on him, cold and sharp. "Who gave a janitor permission to touch my son?" she demanded, her voice like thunder. No one answered. The air around her grew hot. The guards shook in fear. Ethan stood, his voice steady, though his heart raced. "No one, Your Majesty." "I only wanted to help." The queen stepped closer. Her shadow fell over him. "Help?" she hissed. "Do you think a human can help royal blood?" She raised her hand. Energy crackled around her fingers, ready to strike. But before she could attack, her son stirred and reached for Ethan's shirt, smiling faintly. The queen froze. For the first time in months, her son looked peaceful. Ethan whispered. He's okay now. The queen's power faded. Her armor dimmed. She stared at Ethan, torn between anger and disbelief. The whole palace seemed to hold its breath, and then, in a voice soft but full of warning, she said, "You will explain everything to me, or you will not see another sunrise." The golden lights of the royal chamber flickered as silence filled the room. Queen Jera stood tall before the human janitor, her sharp eyes glowing like blue fire. No one dared to move, not even the guards. The only sound came from the gentle breathing of the young prince, still asleep in Ethan's arms. The queen's voice broke the silence, low and dangerous. "Put him down." Ethan obeyed slowly, laying the child gently on the glowing cradle made of crystal vines. The moment he stepped back, the energy sensors around the bed came to life, scanning every molecule. They beeped once, then twice, and finally flashed green. The queen frowned. That had never happened before. The sensors always showed red when the prince cried out. His power used to rise beyond safe levels. But now, for the first time in months, they showed peace. "How did you do this?" she asked, her tone sharp but curious. Ethan rubbed his hands nervously. "I just held him, Your Majesty. My daughter used to cry like that when she was little. Sometimes she didn't need medicine or machines, just someone to hold her." "Hold?" The queen's lips curled. "You speak as if my son were a fragile creature." "He's a child," Ethan said softly. "Even royal children need comfort." The guards gasped. No one ever spoke so simply to the queen. Yet instead of fury, she looked uncertain, as if his words reached a place she had buried long ago. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she turned to her chief advisor, Lord Veyron, a tall alien with skin like molten silver. "Dismiss the healers," she ordered. "All of them." Veyron bowed deeply, though his eyes glared at Ethan. "Your Majesty, this is most unwise." "A human cannot—" "Silence," she snapped. "This human will remain." The guards hesitated. The queen's tone left no room for argument. She faced Ethan again. "You claim to understand my child, prove it. You will care for him for 1 week. If he gets worse, you will be punished for touching royal blood." Ethan blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "You want me to be his nanny?" The queen's stare hardened. "Do not mock me. You will follow my orders exactly. Fail and you will wish you had never set foot on Jera." Ethan bowed his head. "I accept." The queen turned and walked away, her long cape sweeping across the marble floor. As she left, she paused at the doorway and said without looking back, "Your kind is weak, human. If you survive this week, maybe I will believe you are different." The next morning, the palace halls buzzed with rumors. Servants whispered behind walls. "The janitor is the new royal nanny. The queen has gone mad. He'll be vaporized before the sun set." Ethan ignored the stares. He reported to the nursery early, wearing his simple gray uniform. Inside, the prince was awake, lying quietly in his energy cradle. When Ethan approached, the boy's strange eyes blinked, bright gold with tiny stars inside. "Hey, little one," Ethan said softly. "How are you feeling today?" The prince tilted his head but didn't speak. His kind didn't talk until age 5, and even then only through thought. Ethan sat beside him, humming an old earth lullaby. Something unexpected happened. The boy's pulse lights, glowing through his crystal-like skin, started to blink in rhythm with the song. The palace sensors again flashed green. Ethan smiled. "Looks like you like music, huh?" Unknown to him, Queen Jera was watching through a hologram feed from her throne chamber. She leaned forward, studying the image with disbelief. For months, every healer had failed. Yet this simple human man had quieted her son twice, with no tools, no power, no science. Lord Veyron stood beside her, frowning deeply. "Majesty, this could be dangerous. Humans carry unstable biology. He may be affecting the prince's energy balance." The queen didn't answer immediately. Her eyes softened as she watched her child. "He is calm," she said at last. For the first time in months, Veyron bowed again, his voice cold. "And if the peace does not last?" Her expression hardened. "Then the human dies." Later that night, as Ethan left the nursery, he met the queen in the corridor. She stood alone, her face hidden behind a silver mask of control. "You have done something no one else could," she said quietly. "But do not believe I trust you." Ethan nodded. "I don't ask for that, Your Majesty. I just want to help the boy." She studied him carefully. Why would a human risk his life for someone not his own? He looked down, thinking of his daughter asleep in their small palace room. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone you love," he said softly. "I wouldn't wish that pain on any parent. Not even a queen." For a heartbeat, her mask cracked. Her voice lowered, almost human. "If you truly mean that, then do not fail me." She turned and walked away before he could reply. Ethan stood there, staring at the empty hall, his heart heavy but determined. Somewhere deep inside, he felt this was more than just a job. It was destiny. He didn't know that in the shadows, Lord Veyron was already watching him, eyes full of hate. The queen had made her decision. But not everyone in the palace agreed with it. And soon Ethan would learn that saving one alien child could change the fate of an entire empire. The next few days passed like a quiet storm. Ethan, the human janitor turned royal nanny, had begun to settle into a strange rhythm inside the alien palace. The servants still whispered about him when he walked by, and the guards still watched him with cold, sharp eyes. But Ethan ignored them. His focus was the prince, little Kale, the child with stars in his eyes and pain in his veins. Every morning, Ethan entered the crystal nursery with a calm smile and a cup of herbal vapor, something harmless that helped the boy's breathing. He cleaned the air filters, checked the room's pressure seals, and hummed softly while he worked. Sometimes Kale would just watch him with wide golden eyes. Other times he would reach out a small glowing hand, as if trying to feel Ethan's heartbeat through the air. The first time he did that, Ethan smiled and let the tiny hand rest on his wrist. "See, still alive," he said softly. "That means you will be too." To everyone's shock, the sensors in the room stayed green again. Word spread fast across the palace. "The human keeps the prince stable," the guards whispered. "He sings strange earth songs and the prince responds." Queen Zara heard every rumor but said nothing. She kept watching from the shadows, silently studying this human man who had somehow done what no alien healer could. One night, after the palace lights dimmed and the corridors emptied, Ethan stayed behind in the nursery. He had noticed something strange, a faint pulse in the machines that monitored Kyle's body. It flickered every time the boy winced in his sleep. He leaned closer, studying the holographic display. The readings made no sense. Kyle's biocore, an organ that stored and released energy, was fluctuating wildly. It was like a power engine breaking down piece by piece. Ethan frowned. "That's not pain from sickness. It's an energy leak." He used to be an engineer back on Earth before he lost everything. He knew what it looked like when something was breaking from the inside. As he leaned in, he didn't notice the small figure standing by the door. His daughter Lily had wandered in quietly, holding her small toy light cube. "Dad," she whispered. "Is he okay?" Ethan turned. "He's sleeping, sweetheart. He's very sick, but we're going to help him, all right?" Lily walked closer, looking at the glowing alien child with wonder. "He's beautiful," she said softly. Then she reached out and gently placed her toy cube beside Kale's hand. The cube lit up with a soft golden color that matched the prince's glow. Kyle opened his eyes slowly. For the first time, he smiled. Ethan felt something deep in his chest, a warmth he hadn't felt since his wife died. "That's it," he whispered. He just needed a friend. The next morning, when the queen arrived for her daily inspection, she froze at the sight before her. Her son was laughing with a human child. Lily was sitting cross-legged on the floor, showing Kyle how to make shapes from the light cube. The two children's laughter filled the air like music. The queen's guards raised their weapons in shock, but the queen lifted her hand. "Stand down," she ordered softly. Her voice trembled. Ethan quickly stood up and bowed. "Forgive me, Your Majesty. My daughter came in by mistake. I'll take her out." But the queen didn't answer immediately. She stared at her son, her expression unreadable. For months the boy hadn't smiled, hadn't laughed, hadn't even looked at her without pain. Now he looked alive. Finally she said quietly, "Leave them." Ethan blinked. "Your Majesty?" "Leave them," she repeated louder. "Let them play." She turned away before anyone could see the tears shining in her eyes. Later that evening, Queen Zara stood alone in her private chamber. She stared at the holographic report floating before her. Her son's energy levels had risen by 11%. That was impossible. Every healer had said the damage to his biocore was permanent. But something had changed. and only one explanation remained. The human. Her advisor, Lord Veyron, appeared through a communication orb. His metallic voice was cold. "Majesty, this cannot continue. If the council learns that a human is influencing royal DNA, they will call it contamination. You will be accused of treason." The Queen's voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "My son is getting better." "Or being poisoned," Veyron hissed. "You forget what they are, Queen. Humans break things. They pretend to heal so they can control." Jera's hands tightened on her throne's armrests. "You forget yourself, Veyron. I am the one who decides what is poison and what is cure." But even as she spoke, her mind was not calm. Could it be true? Was this human using some secret Earth technology? She would have to find out. That night, Ethan began sketching something on his old tablet, a small design, half biological, half mechanical. An idea that had come to him while studying Kale's readings. "If I can build a stabilizer," he whispered to himself, "maybe I can stop his pain completely." He didn't notice that outside the door. A small spy drone hovered, recording everything, and far away, in the Queen's council chamber, Veyron watched the images appear on his screen. He smiled darkly. "So, the human wants to play with royal biology. Let him dig his own grave." The pieces of fate were moving now. The secret of the prince was no longer just a sickness. It was the spark of something much greater, and Ethan Cole was about to step into a danger that could change the galaxy forever. The palace was quiet that night. Too quiet. Queen Jera stood by the large window of her chamber looking out at the twin moons. Their light reflected off her silver armor and cold royal eyes. But inside her heart, something strange was happening, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. For days now, she had watched her son laugh with the human's daughter. She had seen him smile without pain, sleep without crying, and reach out without fear. It was something she once believed she would never see again. Yet it was happening, and it was because of him, the human. She clenched her fists. "Why?" she whispered to herself. "Why can he do what I could not?" Her reflection in the glass stared back at her. The face of a queen who had fought in 3 wars, who had conquered 7 planets, but could not save her only child. Behind her, the doors opened with a soft hiss. It was Ethan. He stopped a few steps away and bowed his head. "You called for me, Your Majesty?" She didn't turn. "My son laughed today," she said quietly. "Do you know how long it has been since I heard that sound?" Ethan shook his head. "No, ma'am. 3 years," she whispered. Since the day his father died, Ethan's eyes softened. "I'm sorry." Jera turned slowly, her silver eyes meeting his. "Do humans grieve long for those they lose?" Ethan smiled faintly, though his eyes looked tired. "Some forever," he said. "But grief changes. It becomes a memory. One that still hurts but also reminds you that you once loved." The Queen studied him, her expression unreadable. "You speak like someone who has lost much." He nodded. "My wife, 2 years ago. She was sick. I tried everything, but nothing worked. After she passed, I promised myself that my daughter would never feel alone." Jera looked away, silent for a long time. "Your daughter reminds me of Kale," she said at last. "Brave, gentle, and full of light." Ethan's lips curved into a small smile. "Children are like stars, Your Majesty. They find light even in the dark." The Queen's armor shimmered faintly as her energy pulse calmed. "You speak strangely for a janitor." "I used to be an engineer," Ethan said. "On Earth, before everything fell apart." Jera's gaze softened. "And yet here you are. A father, a servant, a healer of sorts," he shrugged. "Sometimes life breaks you until you find what really matters." The Queen looked down at her gloved hands. "When I was young, I thought power mattered most. But power could not stop my child's pain." Her voice trembled slightly, just enough for Ethan to hear the person beneath the armor. "I know that feeling," he said quietly. "When you have everything but still can't save the one who needs you most." Jera turned to him, her sharp expression fading. "You speak as though you understand me." "I do," Ethan said simply. For a brief moment, they just stood there, 2 different worlds, united by pain. Suddenly, a sound broke the quiet. The Queen's communication orb lit up, and the metallic face of Lord Veyron appeared. "Your Majesty," he said with false respect, "there's something you must see." The image changed, showing Ethan's tablet, open with his sketches of a strange device. Jera's eyes narrowed. "What is this?" Veyron's voice turned cold. Proof that the human is creating an unauthorized machine to tamper with royal biology. He is using your child as an experiment. Ethan's heart sank. No, that's not true. I was trying to find a way to stabilize the prince's biocore. It's not a weapon. But Varen continued, his voice rising. You have seen what humans do. They build, then they destroy. He is a danger, Majesty. Remove him before it's too late. The queen stared at Ethan, torn. Part of her wanted to believe him. Another part remembered every betrayal she had endured during the wars. Your Majesty, please, Ethan said. I would never hurt your son. He's like a second child to me. Shara turned away, her mind in chaos. Memories flashed. Her husband dying in her arms, the endless battles, her son's screams. Trust was something she had buried long ago. Finally, she said, her voice cold again. You will not touch the prince until I say otherwise. Ethan's face fell. But enough, she snapped. Guards, escort him to his quarters. He is confined until further notice. The guards grabbed Ethan's arms and pulled him away. Lily ran out from a side hall crying, Dad, what's happening? Ethan forced a small smile. It's all right, sweetheart, stay brave. As they dragged him out, the queen stood motionless, staring at the glowing window once more. In her chest, her heart ached, but she told herself it was for the best. Yet deep inside, she heard a whisper, a voice she hadn't heard in years. Her husband's voice. Jara, it said softly. Power can't save a soul. Only love can. Her hands trembled. Maybe the human wasn't her enemy. Maybe. He was her last chance to remember what being alive truly meant. The palace lights burned red that night. Sirens echoed through the long silver halls, signaling a lockdown. Ethan sat inside his small room, the doors sealed, 2 guards standing outside like statues. He had been a prisoner for 3 days. He hadn't seen the queen. He hadn't seen Lily. And worst of all, he hadn't seen Prince Kale. He sat on his narrow bed, staring at the half-finished sketch on his tablet. The drawing of the stabilizer still glowed faintly on the screen, a small circular device meant to balance the energy inside Kale's fragile body. Ethan whispered to himself, if I could just show her it works. But he knew she didn't trust him anymore. Not after Lord Varen's lies. He looked out the narrow window toward the glowing towers. Somewhere up there, the boy was suffering again. He could almost hear the cries through the silence. And then, he did. A scream ripped through the palace. Not just any scream. It was Kale's. The sound hit like thunder, shaking the glass. The guards flinched. Ethan jumped to his feet. He's in pain again. Let me help him. Stay back, one guard shouted. Guard, you are not allowed to leave. But the scream came again, longer, sharper, like the sound of breaking stars. The lights flickered. The air began to hum with energy. Ethan's heart raced. If we don't do something, that child will die. He grabbed the small metal band he had hidden under his bed, the prototype stabilizer he'd built from scraps and spare tech. It wasn't perfect, but it might work. The guards blocked his way, but Ethan's face hardened. Move. The guards hesitated. The floor beneath them trembled. Sparks of blue energy spread through the air like lightning. Finally, one guard stepped aside. Go, before she finds out. Ethan ran. In the royal nursery, chaos reigned. Healers shouted, alarms blared, and the young prince floated above his bed, surrounded by wild energy. His body glowed dangerously bright. The machines screamed warnings. Critical core collapse. Queen Jara stood beside him, her armor glowing with protective shields, her face pale with fear. Stabilize him, she shouted. We can't, a healer cried. His energy core is tearing itself apart. And then, through the smoke and light, Ethan burst through the doors. Move aside! The guards raised their weapons. The queen turned in fury. How dare you! Your Majesty, please! Ethan shouted. If you want your son to live, you'll let me try this. He held up the small device, glowing faintly with blue light. It's a stabilizer. It will balance his energy flow. Just give me one chance. The queen's eyes flashed. If you harm him, I won't, Ethan said softly. I swear on my daughter's life. The Queen hesitated. Kyle screamed again, his small body shaking violently. And in that moment, her heart chose faster than her crown. Do it. Ethan ran to the boy's side, ignoring the storm of energy. He placed the stabilizer over Kale's chest, right where the glow burned brightest. He pressed the activation key. The device hummed, its lights spinning faster and faster. For a second, nothing happened. Then a pulse of white energy burst out, knocking everyone back. Ethan fell hard, smoke stinging his eyes. When he looked up, the boy was floating still, but calmer. The wild energy around him was fading. His breathing slowed. His glow softened to a peaceful gold. Ethan's heart lifted. It worked. It's working. But just as hope rose, the doors slammed open. Lord Varen stormed in with a squad of armed guards and council drones. "Arrest him," he bellowed. "The human has violated galactic law." The guards surrounded Ethan instantly. Varen's voice dripped with venom. "You used forbidden technology on royal blood. The punishment is death." Ethan raised his hands, desperate. "I saved his life. Look at him." Kale's eyes opened, weak but clear. He reached out toward Ethan, glowing, hand trembling. The Queen looked from her son to the human, then to Varen. Her mind was a storm. "He broke the law," Varen said coldly. "You must make an example of him before the Galactic Council arrives." Ethan looked at her, his voice quiet but firm. "You can call it a crime, but I call it love." The Queen's breath caught. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the alarms changed. Deep, booming tones. The Council's ships were arriving, their blue shadows covering the palace. Jarrah turned to Ethan, her voice trembling. "They'll demand your execution. If I protect you, they will call it treason." "Then let them," Ethan said. "But at least your son will live." The Queen's armor flared with light, her face torn between duty and heart. The soldiers waited. Outside, the sky burned with descending council ships. Finally, she whispered the words that would shake the galaxy. "Take him to the throne hall. I will decide his fate myself." Ethan was dragged away, his hands bound but his heart steady. Behind him, the prince's soft voice echoed for the first time in his life. "Duh, Ethan." Every guard froze. The Queen's eyes filled with tears. Her child had spoken. Because of a human. And for the first time in her reign, Queen Jarrah no longer knew who the real enemy was. The throne hall of Ziara had never been this silent. The air was thick with fear and light. Hundreds of alien guards lined the golden steps that led up to the great throne. The floor shimmered like liquid glass beneath the weight of their boots. Above them, the ceiling glowed with the galaxy's reflection, cold, endless, and watching. Ethan stood in the middle of the hall, his wrists bound with silver cuffs that burned faintly against his skin. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, but his eyes were steady. Before him, Queen Jarrah sat on her crystal throne, her armor glowing with deep blue light. Around her stood the Galactic Council's envoys, tall, silver beings whose faces were hidden behind masks of light. Lord Varen stood to her right, his voice smooth but sharp like a blade. "Your Majesty, this is a grave violation. The human interfered with royal biology, using forbidden technology. The law is clear: death by disintegration." The hall buzzed with murmurs. The Queen raised a hand and silence returned. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "And yet my son lives because of him." Varen's metallic eyes glinted. "That may be so, but the law—" "The law," she interrupted, "has failed to save him 15 times before. 15 trained healers, 15 experts from the greatest worlds in this galaxy, all failed." She stood slowly, her tall figure casting a long shadow across the hall. And then came a human janitor. No power, no title, no weapon. Yet he did what none of them could. Varen's voice grew colder. "Majesty, you cannot let emotions cloud judgment. The council watches." The Queen turned her head slightly. I have been their servant for years, Varen, but today, I am a mother before I am a ruler." The crowd gasped softly. Ethan looked up. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I didn't come here to break your laws. I just wanted to stop your son's pain." Jera's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You risked your life knowing what the punishment would be." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's what fathers do." From behind the throne, a small voice echoed. "Mama." Every alien in the room turned. Prince Kale stood in the doorway, glowing softly. He walked slowly down the long hall, supported by a tiny hand. Lilies. The two children stepped forward together. The energy sensors around the hall began to flicker as the boy's glow balanced perfectly with the light around him. The Queen's breath caught. "Kale, you're walking." The boy nodded weakly. "Ethan fixed me." The entire hall fell silent again. The council leader stepped forward, his voice like metal scraping against stone. "Majesty, this display changes nothing. The human has altered royal essence. This threatens genetic order across all worlds. If he is not punished, the council will remove you from the throne." Jera looked from the alien faces to her son, then to Ethan. Her heart waged a silent war against her crown. Ethan's voice broke through the tension. "If I die, it won't stop the truth. Your people will still fear what they don't understand. But maybe if you stand for what's right, they'll learn that mercy is not weakness." The Queen stared at him, her eyes wet but unbroken. Lord Varen shouted, "Enough! Guards, take him!" But before he could finish, a sudden quake shook the hall. The energy from the council's ships outside pulsed violently. The stabilizer on Kale's chest began to glow again, reacting to the tension. Kale screamed, falling to his knees. Ethan broke free from his guards and ran toward him. The council's drones aimed their weapons. "Stop!" the Queen shouted, but too late. The drones fired. Bolts of energy shot through the air. Ethan threw himself over the boy, shielding him with his own body. The blast hit. The lights flickered. Smoke filled the hall. When it cleared, Ethan lay motionless, his back scorched, arms still wrapped protectively around the prince. Jera's scream shattered the silence. Her energy flared, breaking the marble beneath her feet. "You fools," she cried. "He was saving my son." Kale stirred weakly under Ethan's arms. "Don't, Ethan." Jera knelt beside them, her hands shaking as she touched the human's shoulder. His breathing was weak, but his eyes fluttered open. He whispered, "Is he safe?" Tears rolled down the Queen's face. "Yes, you saved him again," Ethan smiled faintly. "Then, that's enough." Jera looked up, fire burning in her eyes. "No," she said coldly. "It's not enough." She stood, her voice echoing through the hall. "This human has done what our laws could not. He gave life when all else failed. If the council calls that a crime, then I am guilty too." The council leader raised a hand. "You dare defy—" "Yes," she roared. "I dare." Her power exploded outward in a blinding wave of light. The council envoys stumbled back, their shields flickering. The guards dropped to their knees. "From this day," she declared, "no law shall punish compassion, and no human who saves a life shall ever be called lesser again." The hall filled with light as the Queen knelt beside Ethan once more, her armor glowing brighter than ever. "You are no longer a janitor, Ethan Cole," she said softly. "You are a hero of Xiara." He smiled weakly. "I just wanted him to laugh again." The Queen pressed her forehead to his, the royal gesture of honor. "He will. Because of you." Outside, the sky blazed with the glow of new dawn. The human had stood alone before an empire, and changed its heart. The dawn over Xiara burned red and gold. The twin suns rose slowly, their light falling across the broken marble of the royal hall. Smoke still lingered from the battle inside, and the air smelled of ozone and tears. Queen Jera stood in the center of the throne room, her long silver cloak torn, her crown dimmed. Around her, guards and healers rushed to repair what they could, but her focus was on only one figure lying on the floor, Ethan Cole, the human who had defied the galaxy for the sake of one small boy. He was alive, but barely. His breathing was shallow, his body weak from the blast that had struck him. Beside him sat Prince Kale, clutching Ethan's hand with glowing fingers, refusing to let go. The stabilizer on his chest pulsed softly in rhythm with the man's fading heartbeat. Jira knelt beside them, her trembling hand brushing a streak of dust from Ethan's cheek. "He saved us all," she whispered. But her words were cut short by the sound of engines rumbling outside. The Galactic Council's fleet had surrounded the palace. Dozens of ships hovered in the blood-colored sky, their lights cold and unforgiving. A metallic voice echoed through the air. "Queen Zera of Ziara, you have broken the galactic law. Surrender the human and stand trial for treason or face judgment by force." The queen rose slowly, her eyes fierce. "They will not touch him." Lord Veyron, bruised but unbowed, limped forward from behind the council dais. "Majesty, please. You cannot fight the council. Their power dwarfs ours. If you resist, you will lose everything, the throne, your people, your child." Jera's voice was calm but unshakable. "Then I lose it on my terms," she turned to the guards. "Prepare the palace shields. Evacuate the children and the elderly. No one fires unless I command." "Majesty." "Do it," she thundered. The guards obeyed at once. Ethan stirred, opening his eyes weakly. What's happening?" Jera knelt beside him again. "The council is here. They want to destroy what they fear." Ethan tried to sit up, groaning. Don't fight them. They'll kill everyone." The queen smiled sadly. "Then let them come. I will not let your sacrifice end in chains." He shook his head. "There's another way," she frowned. "What do you mean?" Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small shard of crystal, the broken piece of the stabilizer that had saved Kale. "The core still holds power. If we link it to your palace shields, it might amplify the field. You can protect the whole planet. But it'll drain what's left of me." Jera froze. "No, I will not let you give more." He smiled weakly. "You already taught me what giving means." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Queen and janitor, alien and human. Ruler and father, two lives bound by something deeper than blood. Finally, Jera nodded. "Then we'll do it together." Moments later, the sky burned brighter. The council's ships began their assault, firing beams of white light toward the palace. The ground shook, towers cracked, and shockwaves rolled across the capital. In the central hall, the queen stood beside Ethan at the energy core chamber. She placed her hand on the glowing console. He placed the crystal shard inside the main conduit. "Ready?" she asked. Ethan nodded faintly. "Let's make history." The queen slammed her hand down. "Activate the shield." A wave of pure light burst outward from the palace, spreading across the city like sunrise after a long storm. The council's beams hit the barrier and bounced harmlessly away. The people of Ziara looked up in awe. For the first time in centuries, they saw their queen not as a warrior, but as a protector. But inside the palace, Ethan fell to his knees. The shard drained the last of his strength. His glow faded slowly. Jera caught him before he hit the floor. "Stay with me," she whispered desperately. "Please," he smiled faintly. "It's okay. You did it." Tears glistened in her silver eyes. "You saved us all." "No," he murmured. "We saved each other." And with that, his eyes closed. The queen held him close, her head bowed. Around them, the shield shimmered like a living sky. Kale ran to her side, hugging both tightly. "Mama, he's gone?" Jera's voice cracked. "No, not gone, just beyond the stars." She looked toward the heavens, her tears glowing in the golden light. Days later, peace returned to Ziara. The council withdrew, unable to break the new alliance of humans and aliens that had risen from one man's courage. In the center of the palace gardens stood a new monument, a statue of a human holding a small child. Beneath it were words carved by Queen Zera herself. "He mended what we thought was broken. He taught us that love is stronger than law." Lily and Kale played nearby every morning, laughing under the suns. Their friendship had become a symbol of unity for the entire galaxy. Sometimes, the queen would watch them from her balcony, her hand resting over her heart where she still felt his presence. And on quiet nights, when the stars were bright, she would whisper, "Ethan Cole, the human who made gods, remember they had hearts." The wind would carry her words into the sky, where two lights, one blue and one gold, always shone side by side. The galaxy had called it treason, The queen had called it love, and in the end, love had won.